All right, so there's a famous interview with Bruce Lee, and we'll see what he says.
This is what it is, okay? I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Focus on this metaphor here of water, flowing water, because it really is the most effective metaphor to understand what we're talking about here. So we already spoke about, we want to have a flowing conversation. Once again, think about the person you're most comfortable with, you don't think about anything, it just kind of naturally goes. And then compare that to when you're trying to speak this foreign language and you're super nervous, you can't get the words out, you have no idea what's going on. So when we get emails from people and we hear that the most common frustration that language learners have, they fall into these two categories. One is, I can't follow along when native speakers are speaking because they're speaking too fast. The words blend together. Maybe I know a bunch of words on paper. Maybe I've learned how to read and write, but in a conversation context, I feel like I'm drowning, right? So that's what happens when water turns against us, right? We have this stream of sound coming at us at high speed. And if we don't know how to manage it, we can kind of get lost in that flow and drown in it. Or when it's time for us to speak, we feel blocked, right? It's as if there's, trash in the river or a dam in the river. So you want things to flow out of us. We have things you want to express, emotions, thoughts, feelings we want to put out there and express our true identity to people, but we can't because we feel blocked, right? I can't get the words out. I get tongue-tied. So you either feel like you're drowning or you feel like you're stuck, right? And notice how they all fit into that same metaphor of water. This river metaphor works very well. We want to go with the flow of the stream. And once again, this flow metaphor is actually a technical term now. All right, so this book is very formative to me. I read it, I guess when I was like 19 or whatever. And he's describing, it's called The Psychology of Optimal Experience. So flow state, that what Bruce Lee's talking about when you're like water, you're entering flow state. This book on the right, Stealing Fire, is the more recent book. I'm actually doing training with these people right now. They're kind of the lead experts on flow state. So what is flow state? Well, these Stealing Fire guys define it. The best way you can think about it is with this acronym, STER, S-T-E-R. And it's that experience you have, it's not, happiness, it's not, any other kind of emotions. It's that experience, that state of consciousness you enter into where you lose your sense of self, you lose a sense of time. Time flies by without you realizing it. Things seem effortless. It just kind of flows and goes. And then the experience is very rich. You have, you notice all these details. It's a higher intensity kind of experience. So what are some examples? Well, one is a flowing conversation. This is the one we're really trying to focus on here, the mimic method. When imagine think about the time you met that person, you just had that really special chemistry or whatever, and then time goes by. You can just speak, you feel like you're understood, you feel like you understand that person, you can just talk forever, right? That's a flowing conversation. You're not thinking about, what work do I have to do tomorrow? Or like, what was that person talking about earlier? Like, boom, you're completely immersed in the moment. Notice again that word immersed. Keep going back to these water metaphors. You're completely immersed in the moment and engaged. So when you're in this flow state, all the things that typically get in the way of what you want to do are gone. Your sense of self-consciousness, your sense of worrying about how much time it is, putting in effort and laboring things, and then you're really entering this rich flow state. Because everyone has experienced flow state, whether they realize it or not. Because when you can understand that experience, that's what we're looking for when we're going into this foreign language experience. And I'm going to talk about how we actually develop that ability with your target language. But I want to show one more thing, which is what happens once you've entered into flow. So this is the learning loop. We mentioned before, right? I think we mentioned before, actually. I'm pretty sure we did. the 3 P's of learning are perception, practice, and performance. Yeah, we talked about that for the movement lecture, right? So I mentioned in jiu-jitsu, for example, I perceive the better jiu-jitsu person doing a movement, then I practice that movement myself. I play around with it, try to get different angles, see how it feels. Then when I come into the match, I perform it. And then once I successfully perform it, I've integrated it into myself. And then what happens is when you integrate, you've now expanded. You've become more a better jiu-jitsu person, a better whatever the art form is, which means when you go back and you perceive the experience again, someone doing the thing, you end up perceiving more details because now you have that much more expert of an eye, expert of a perception mechanism. So you keep repeating that loop. And this is the learning loop. This is how learning occurs. So language learning, when you're in the reading and writing paradigm, right? And you kind of memorize these words on paper and then, you kind of sticks in your head and it's kind of more like, it's like memorizing the 50 states and their capitals. It's more declarative memory. It's more just pure like kind of intellectual mind, but it's not a movement practice. When you develop the ability to just go in with the flow of the language and not crash and not drown and like kind of flow with it, what you become is a mimic. This is why I call it the mimic method. And what a mimic can do, this is the first thing that I try to achieve when I'm learning a foreign language, is become a mimic. What that means is that when someone speaks to me in the language, even though I don't know what any of it means yet, I'm able to extract out a sentence, a phrase, a couple of syllables, and then I can perceive it accurately, all the sounds, all the intonation. So someone says something, and then I can perceive it, and then I can mimic it. So I can reproduce those exact same sounds that native speaker said, right? I still don't know what it means, but I can ask, what does this mean? And then the person says, oh, this means this, right? Or maybe I don't even need to ask. I can just kind of figure it out from the context. And I'm like, oh, this is what this means, right? And then if I do that enough times, it sticks in my mind. And then the next time I find myself in that context personally, and I want to perform, then it will just kind of come out of me. So that experience of speaking and saying things you don't even know you know, that's what's going on here. But it only happens when you've cleared the path, when you've cleared the channel and you allow things to flow. So you're clear on what this learning loop looks like. Imagine you have the ability to just perfectly mimic Spanish or French or German, whatever your target language is. Imagine any word anyone said, you can just say it back perfectly. You don't need them to slow it down. You don't need them to write it down. You just hear it, boom, hit it exact, as if you recorded their voice on your phone and press play. Exactly, right? Then someone comes and then you want to know how to say this thing. What does this mean, right? But instead of going to a dictionary and looking it up or writing it down, you go to someone, you say, hey, what sounds do you make with your mouth when you want to refer to this object, right? And he's like, oh, I say water bottle or bouteille de l'eau or botella de agua, right? And they say whatever sound effects that they like to make when they refer to this object in the world. And then you hear it. Because your ear has opened the channel, you don't get drowned in it. You don't have to ask them to write it down. It comes in and you say, okay, boom, I hear that. Then you reproduce it. You say, bouteille de l'eau, botella de agua, water bottle, and you can say those sounds. And the guy's like, yeah, good job, right? And then you come back the next day and the guy's like, hey, what sounds do we make to refer to this object? And you're like, I don't remember, right? Because you don't have to remember the first time, right? Never get it the first time, don't beat yourself up. Probably a second time either, it's not gonna work. But you keep refreshing that circuit. Your brain starts to make the association. You link that sound to that meaning. And then finally one day you're like, hey, what's this called? And you're like, botella de agua, botella de l'eau, right? Water bottle. And it just comes out of you. Boom. Now you've succeeded in your performance. The moment came for you to perform and to speak that word or to speak that phrase in that context, and you got it. Boom. Now you've experienced yourself doing it successfully. Your confidence level skyrockets. Now you have that confidence. Next time you want to refer to water, you're like, oh yeah, I can take care of that. I know I can refer to water, right? Repeat that process for all the other words, all the other experiences you have bit by bit, then that is the path of fluency. And by the way, fluency comes from the Latin word fluere, which is the same root of the word flow. Flow, fluency, fluid is all the same word originally. Okay, that's what it's all about, the water flowing. So really keep that metaphor in mind.